Welcome in to 704 Unfiltered. I'm Nick Sturdivant. I'm your host. Carlene is also here in studio with me. All right, so today's guest is retired Chief Deputy Sheriff Rodney Collins. He has more than 30 years of experience with the Mecklenburg County Sheriff's Office, starting as a deputy sheriff and rising through the ranks to chief deputy. Look, his resume is so long, I'm not even going to read it because we're just going to get right into the conversation. Welcome in, Mr. Collins. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Nick. Glad to be here.
How's it going so far? We're in that final sort of stretch leading up to the primary. How's it been so far?
It's been an exhausting process, but something that's well worth it. I mean, we understood when we decided to run for office what we were going to face. And so just getting through this, it has been a very, very exhausting task, but nonetheless, it's been an enjoyable process as well. So I've learned a lot through it and continuing to try to navigate it as best I can.
I asked Mr. Collins about his schedule. He looked up, and I said, anytime somebody looks up, that means they got a lot on their calendar. So he's handling it well. It looks like you're handling it well.
We're doing the best we can, sir. Yes.
We talked about it before. I feel like this is a Carolina thing. As soon as you meet somebody, where are you from? You asked me where I'm from.
Right.
Talk about where you're from.
It is. So I'm originally from Columbia, South Carolina, but grew up here in Charlotte. Nations Ford Elementary, Kennedy Middle School, and Olympic High School graduate. Big O.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So all my time growing up was spent here.
Talk about growing up in Charlotte. Because obviously Charlotte now is much different than Charlotte 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Talk about growing up here.
So growing up here was great, actually. Back then it was a much smaller, closer-knit communities.
Mm-hmm.
But, and it's expanded because it really baffles me now, even when I drive around different parts of town, and I'm like, I know I'm not lost, but none of the landmarks that used to be here are here anymore. So it's a great city. It's grown so much over the course of, my years here. So it is really a great place to live and raise a family. And it was one of the reasons, even when I left to go off to the Air Force, I knew once my tenure was up there that I was coming back home.
Oh, so that was always a goal. Because some people, they move away from their hometown and like, I'm not coming back. So you always knew you were coming back to Charlotte.
I always knew I was coming back home, yes.
But fondest memory growing up here in Charlotte, what's one thing that sort of sticks out?
The one thing that sticks out was the community that I grew up in and how close the families were. Mm-hmm. I think that when you have neighbors that really look out for you, look out for your children, look out and think about that network that we had growing up, that we all knew each other. We were all very close, and it was a very close-knit community. So that's one of my fondest memories growing up here in Charlotte.
Into the service. Why? You said Air Force, right?
Yes.
Why the Air Force?
Well, just being fully transparent, I wasn't quite certain exactly what I wanted to do when I got out of high school. I thought I was kind of getting away from school and education, so to speak. I was definitely wrong by going in the Air Force. But I knew that I wanted to continue to serve. So going in the Air Force and starting my law enforcement career there as a military policeman really set the foundation. So, having great experiences there, learning so much about law enforcement structure, being organized, being professional, being competent and skilled at your craft. It's all the things that were really drilled into you while I was in the Air Force.
Will you say that sort of shaped you to who you are today,
yes,
being in the Air
absolutely.
Force? Oh, man. And you worked in the Pentagon, or?
I did.
Okay.
I had an assignment briefly in the Pentagon, yes.
What was that like?
It was a great assignment. I mean, I worked directly for the Secretary of Defense, which was then Richard Cheney. So you were part of his security team while he was inside of the Pentagon. So it was a highly competitive process for us to be selected for that. But it was a great opportunity for us to see things from a different perspective, to step away just from your regular Air Force assignment and duties to work in that space for that time was a great experience for me.
Obviously, again, you moved back to Charlotte. You knew you wanted to move back to Charlotte. Did you already start your family yet?
I did.
Okay. So was that an easy decision? I mean, I know you wanted to, but
so this was the deal my wife and I made. She was from St. Louis.
Okay.
And so I knew I wanted to come back to Charlotte. And, of course, she wanted to return to St. Louis. So I was like, well, whoever gets the job first is going to determine
That's not bad.
where we land. So my opportunity came before hers, and here we are.
Why the sheriff's office? Was it immediate or obviously? Well, you got the job, but did you know that you wanted to work for the sheriff's office when you're thinking about moving to Charlotte? I should ask, or did CMPD or did any other agency kind of come into mind?
I had an opportunity at the sheriff's office early on.
Okay.
So I was decided to go there, and then initially when I got there, it was early 1994. Mm-hmm. It was a little different coming out of the Air Force. The things that we saw. I mean, they didn't have a direct deposit for employees. So I remember working there for a few weeks, and I was probably about almost 2 months in, and I went to my lieutenant at the time and said, I hadn't received a paycheck in a while, so I'm a little concerned about that. He said, have you gone out to, we had a facility off of North Tryon called the Satellite Jail Facility. Uh-huh. And he was like, your check will be out there in a accordion file, behind your corresponding letter of your last name. And I was like, okay, we don't do direct deposit here. But just to watch that organization grow and evolve over time, and then being one that was instrumental in that, helping with that growth and professionalization of the organization was I was in the right place.
30-year career there?
30-year career there,
30-year. I was reading your bio, and some of these moments I remember, like the Democratic National Convention that was here in Charlotte. I've heard the stories from other reporters who covered it. Yeah. A lot going on. Billy Graham. I was actually working in Greensboro, the Billy Graham's funeral, which we're not far from the library. Those experiences, that's a lot to wrap your arms around as an agency.
Yes.
Can you kind of describe the work that went into that and your role in all of that?
Yes. So I was responsible for developing the Sheriff's Office operational plan for those large-scale events. Mm-hmm. So you work collaboratively with CMPD, Secret Service, FBI, all the other agencies that are brought into this community to fulfill that security obligation for those functions. So they're called national security events. So having that skill, that planning background, being able to do all those things and to set up the sheriff's office's operational plan for that was something that was a highlight of my career, actually, to be able to pull that off and to put our resources to use to the good of such a large scale event. So
I imagine it was stressful.
It was. You didn't get much rest during that time, but it was great though.
I know you were there for 30 years. There's a lot and I'm going to ask you a question, and feel free if you just need some time to think about it.
Okay.
Biggest takeaway from your time at the sheriff's office?
Biggest takeaway. So I've had an opportunity to work for 5 different sheriffs.
Okay.
They're all different in terms of their management and leadership styles. The thing is that I think that when you're truly committed to your craft and just being a good public servant, that you're able to navigate that and continue on and still continue to advance regardless of the administration. But I think the biggest takeaway, especially in my twilight years, was really just seeing the operation shift and the culture shift to what it has become, and that part was very disappointing, because you have this vision of what you think your twilight years will be like, and mine was very stressful and carrying a lot of different responsibilities and roles within that space. Really made it a challenge, but by and large I had a great career. I enjoyed every minute of it. Even the stressful times, because they make you better. And so it's just been a really great opportunity to serve this community in that capacity for so long.
And I want to ask this before we hit the break. You talk about that time where it was stressful. Did you know then, okay, this is time for me to kind of step away?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So, and then there are other things dealing with our retirement and things that,
Of course,
when I met with my advisor, and I had also purchased my military service time. So it comes a point where you're at a point of diminishing return. So actually in the retirement system, I had over 34 years.
Okay.
Even though but I always physically wanted to work my 30.
Okay.
So yeah, when it came to the point of diminishing return, coupled with everything else that was going on, I knew it was time to step away.
All right, we're going to get back to that. Let's take a quick break. We'll be back here, 704 Unfiltered, right after the break. Welcome back to 704 Unfiltered. We have Mecklenburg County Sheriff candidate and retired Chief Deputy Sheriff Rodney Collins. And we were talking about towards the tail end of your time with the Mecklenburg County Sheriff's Office, there for 30 years. And I asked you this before. When did you make that decision to run for Mecklenburg County Sheriff?
I made the decision to run. Well, I won't say I made it.
Yeah.
It was actually a family decision. My wife and I had taken a vacation. We were sitting at a cafe in Lisbon, Portugal. And we were talking about it, and she gave me her blessing and said that it's something that I really needed to do, and that who's better suited and more qualified to assume that role than you. And I said, you make a good point. So, and from that point, we met with the rest of the family, and we've been all in ever since.
Biggest priority if you were to get elected, primary, I just want to remind folks, March 3rd, go out and vote. Biggest priority if you get elected?
Biggest priority is resetting that organizational culture.
Okay.
The second piece to that is we have chronic staffing shortages. Everything that you do in the sheriff's office is predicated on your ability to staff. So when you talk about safe detention operations, when you talk about the other level of services that you provide, you can't provide that competent, highly professional level of service when you don't have personnel to do so. So really resetting that organizational culture and getting people back into that organization that are committed public service, that want to work, that want to make a difference in our community. That's the key focus.
What was your experience there? You mentioned the culture. What was your experience, and what have you heard from other folks who are probably still currently employees at the sheriff's office? I bring that up because current Sheriff Gary McFadden, there have been claims made about a toxic work culture, among other claims. But what was your experience / what have you heard?
Yes, I'll tell you from personal experience that it is very toxic when your leadership from the organizational head is toxic, when it creates divisiveness and uncertainty. When someone is constantly communicating that they have other people to replace you, that they're going to terminate your employment, trying to lead by fear and intimidation, just isn't the way. It isn't professional. It isn't conducive to the culture. So really resetting that is a top priority. Modeling what you expect your employees to be, being that consummate professional, making sure that we adhere to rules, policies, and guidelines that really shape the organization and insulate us from other legalities is critically important. So, and then making sure that people have a clear understanding and expectation of what's required of them in fair and equitable ways for them to advance. Those are all critical priorities for me.
Shifting gears, let's stay on that a little bit. Staffing shortages you mentioned. How do you address that? Because that's been an issue, and that's not only a Mecklenburg County issue. I've been in a couple of Carolinas for over a decade on and off, and I hear that all the time from sheriff's office. What is there a solution? I know there's not a simple solution.
There isn't a simple solution. Yeah. I think that a lot of retention efforts revolve around leadership.
Yeah.
So I think when you have a conducive environment for people that they want to work in, that they'll stay. The job in and of itself has its own challenges. It's difficult at times. It's stressful. And then also being intentional about how we recruit, advertising, really putting that investment into that space and making sure that we attract talent. We have competitive salaries, always being certain that we're at the forefront of salaries in the region, making sure that we have good benefits, are all things that are critical to helping those recruitment efforts and getting staff back in the building and want to stay there. So that's critically important.
Two big topics, but the first one I want to hit on, ICE, Border Patrol.
Yes.
We had Border Patrol here not too long ago. It's a national conversation. It's dominated the national conversation.
It has.
What should be the working relationship between the sheriff's office and federal agents? What should that relationship look like?
That relationship should be a professional relationship. Mm-hmm. It should be a relationship that is with tact and decorum. I think that it's critically important to understand too that we may have differing viewpoints about our stance on immigration, but as one law enforcement professional to another, we still have a duty and a service to this community. It's not the sheriff's office role to be de facto ICE agents or anything like that. So cooperation beyond what's required by law isn't necessary, but that cooperation and collaboration that's required through a professional relationship needs to be done just that way. It needs to be professional. It needs to be courteous. It needs to be done appropriately so that we better serve this community.
What I'm hearing too is communication, having communication.
Having communication, having that person that you can call, having those relationships that you establish with people, even though you may differ on your points, but having a professional relationship is critically important in how we need to serve.
What if you don't get that collaboration, that communication, that professional courtesy? What happens then? I hate to play the what happened game,
right?
But what would you do in that situation?
If you don't have that from the other side, I still have an obligation to be professional. Mm-hmm. So as much as I would try to extend that olive branch and push for that collaboration and that professional relationship, if I don't get it, I still move the same way. I still conduct my business as a professional and work around whatever challenges there are. But I won't let someone else's conduct change mine.
Public safety, another big topic. Rena Zaruska, the stabbing on a light rail. There, honestly, before that, there have been other incidents regarding cats. And I just don't want to single out cats, but other issues in violent crime situations. How do you tackle that? And I know that, and I ask you that because it's not just the sheriff's office, but it's collaborating with other agencies within Mecklenburg County.
Right.
How do you tackle that along with that collaboration with those agencies and the community?
I think that it's important to understand that there is a collaboration that goes on with all the local law enforcement here in Mecklenburg, even on the federal level. With other groups, you have DEA that we have people assigned to their task force. You have FBI, and then you have the 6 townships along with the Charlotte Mecklenburg Police Department. I think we all have good collaborative relationships, and I think that we all understand that we work toward the common good of public safety. Being able to lend resources where they're needed to help with public safety, I think is something that's important for the role of sheriff. And for people to understand, and it's also goes a long way that when you have those relationships and you can make those calls and lend resources to wherever you can, that will help to aid in public safety. I think that's the overall goal, because we want to prevent things from happening as best we can. We don't want to be reactive and always having to respond to something that we potentially could have prevented.
What has the conversation been like with families, community members? I'm sure they expressed it to you. What is their take? Because we hear a lot from politicians, we hear a lot from everybody else, agencies, but what community members, people who are directly impacted? And I know you got part of our community too, but what have you heard from community members?
I think that community members, from conversations that I've had, particularly around light rail, some don't feel safe and comfortable riding it. But I think a lot of that too is because of what's been publicized in the media. I've even seen courses now that are designed to protect people or tell people how they could go about protecting themselves in those spaces. So there's some angst amongst the public about public safety, particularly around cats. And I also think that with the passing of this referendum, it will have another police department that'll come online as a result of that. That'll be like a transit police, so to speak, like you see in some of the other larger cities. Perhaps that will bring more resources to the cause of ensuring that our public safety, not our public transportation system is protected a little bit better. But I think that all of us collectively can lend resources where they're needed, whether it's deputy sheriffs working in an off-duty secondary employment capacity in those spaces, anything to increase the presence and make people feel safer. I think those are all opportunities that we should explore.
Before we hit the break, I do want to ask you about that working relationship with lawmakers in Raleigh, because they passed Arena's law. There has been conversation, hey, we don't have enough funding, money. We don't have enough to fund this. We don't know how this is going to work. How do you bridge that communication gap, resolve whatever has been there, and it's been long standing between lawmakers in Raleigh and then officials here in the Charlotte area?
I think you navigate that as best you can.
Yeah.
I mean, having relationships with your local representatives is also important to try to, and they're listening to their constituents here locally as well. So having those relationships to advocate for certain needs here in Mecklenburg is important. The law is the law, and we have to follow that as it's written in those bills. But having that relationship and advocating for what the needs that you have, not only for the sheriff's office, but just for the constituents here in Charlotte, is critically important.
Let's head to break. I got more questions for Rodney Collins, candidate for Mecklenburg County Sheriff Office, or Sheriff, rather. When we come back, we'll be back here in just a few on 704 Unfiltered. Welcome back here on 704 Unfiltered. I'm Nick Sturdivant. I'm with retired Chief Deputy Sheriff Rodney Collins, also candidate for Mecklenburg County Sheriff. So we were talking about platform, some of the issues facing Mecklenburg County, not just Mecklenburg County, but the state. I got to ask you about Jail North.
Yes.
Juvenile Detention Center has been closed in that capacity for some time now. There have been talks of reopening it. Your stance on it? Because we go back to money, funding,
yes.
Staffing shortages, that has plagued that facility.
Yes. So one of the responsibilities I had was I actually was the facility administrator over the Gatlin Juvenile Detention Facility that was in Huntersville. It was a 30-bed facility that at its peak operated about 12 to 15 kids, and sometimes it dipped into the single digits. The costs were astronomical, because you think about this massive infrastructure that you build around the services for those children. Full-time teachers, teachers' aides, programmatic staff, security personnel, administration, a nurse, a psychologist. And when it dips below and down in the single digits, it becomes cost prohibitive. So fast forward to 2019, when the sheriff at the time decided to open North as a juvenile detention center. We entered into a 3-year agreement, only to, at the end of that agreement, to close it again, dating back to the same reasons that we closed it in 2009. So, and one of the things I really want to emphasize and want the public to understand, I agree that Mecklenburg County children that are charged with crimes should be close to their families and support networks. The other part of this is that placing that responsibility where it inherently belongs is on the North Carolina Department of Public Safety. It is not a sheriff's office responsibility. It is the Department of Public Safety's responsibility for juvenile detention. So I'm a big advocate for helping the North Carolina Department of Public Safety construct, staff, and operate their own facility here in Mecklenburg. I would leverage whatever relationships I have with the Board of County Commission, the county manager, to find land and look for opportunities in which to aid in that process. But having that fall on the sheriff's office and us being able to do that, it's going to be really difficult to take on such a task when your primary and core responsibilities aren't being met. So with that being said, I just think it's critically important when we talk about priorities and strategy that I have to fix the issues that are directly in front of me concerning my constitutional mandates and things that I'm required to do before taking on additional responsibilities that inherently belong somewhere else.
I got to ask you again, final stretch until the primary. What is the campaign like this final stretch? What has that been like? I mean, because you have this build up and then you get to the final stretch and then it's just like full speed.
It is.
What has that been like?
It's been a whirlwind, to say the least. I mean, you're constantly on the go, taking calls, answering questionnaires, showing up in different spaces. Really trying to hear from the public and the voters in this county about what's important, what the issues are, what their concerns are, so that you're crafting your message to make sure that you're in alignment with shared values. So it's a whirlwind. It's a grind, to say the least. But I think that the prize at the end of it is the folks in Mecklenburg electing a competent and qualified sheriff. It's well worth the effort.
What have you learned about yourself during this time?
That you'll be tested.
Okay.
Not that I haven't been before,
Yeah.
but politics is a definitely different way to test a person's resolve. And with all that, you understand that your message may not resonate with everyone, but the thing is that you have to be consistent and be true to yourself, and understand that by putting yourself out there for public scrutiny, that it does make a bit challenging at times. There are some issues that you will face, but by and large, you understand the reasons in which you serve.